So
That's crazy.
So what would you say about, obviously when we talk about the diaspora world, there's a sense of, African people or Caribbean people using the word, well, I'm not black, you know what I mean? I'm Caribbean or I'm African or whatever the case is. And they kind of associate negativity or negative stereotypes with Black Americans per se. And they feel like they don't want to identify as black because black usually is the term that Black Americans call themselves. So I don't want to be identified as black, so I am Caribbean. It's like they're separate people over there. You know what I mean? So what's your thoughts on that whole, that divide and just that whole blatant negative stereotype that some Africans or Caribbeans or other black people feel towards Black Americans?
Well, the white man's original tactic of divide and conquer, separate and rule is still his most cherished weapon against African people. You see, understandably, when people look at America up until now being, quote unquote, the most powerful country in the world, if you want to get down with the most powerful country in the world, you're going to have to despise who they despise. And since America has done such a great job despising African people, anybody who wants to come to this country, even if they are African, are going to seek somebody else's company other than ours, right? That doesn't make what they do right. But we have to look at the fact that we as African people in America haven't done a whole lot collectively to make ourselves the power base we should be for all African people. With our education, with our income, being the richest group of African people in the world in terms of take-home pay, we should be the power base for African people throughout the world. Y'all need institutions, we're going to fund them. Y'all have a problem with your water, we're going to fund that. You understand me? You got a medical crisis, we're going to take care of that. We have the resources, we got the personnel, we got the expertise, we got the money. We should be the power base. So when an African comes to America from outside of this country, they say, well, wait a minute now. If I align myself with the African American, what is in that for me? Because I don't even see the African American doing anything for themselves on a collective basis. We have success, but it's all individual, right? There's very few institutions that we run and control independently. Let's take it to Little League. When you go for the Little League football team or the basketball team, do you go try out for the team that's losing every year? Or do you want to be on the championship team? Most children want to be on the championship team. So when Africans from the diaspora come to America, they see two teams, the black team that has lost 157 straight Super Bowls since the end of slavery, right? And the white team that seem like they still winning and doing great. I want to align myself with the white team. Now, the mistake that Africans in the diaspora are making is that if you do not link up with us, your national homeland will never be free either. See, what they do to African people anywhere, they do to African people everywhere. So if you come from Nigeria, you come from Ghana, you come from Jamaica, you come from Turks and Caicos, you don't associate with African people, you go get you a snow bunny, move up on the west side, you can do all that. But understand, your life is only as sacred as white people allow it to be. At any minute, they can turn you into a Breonna Taylor, whether you have a U.S. passport or not. You've seen it happen here in New York City years ago with the Abner Louima and Amadou Diallo cases, where the police, abused African immigrants right here in New York City. So when it comes to white people, we're all African. They know who we are. But they will use one group against the other as long as it is in their best interest. And once they're done using that group, guess what they do to that group? They destroy them too. It's no difference than looking at the black community compared to black celebrities. They used Bill Cosby as long as they could. And when they no longer needed him, they turned on him. They'll use Whitney Houston as long as they could. When they no longer needed her, they murdered her. Michael Jackson, they murdered him. Prince, they murdered him. Jimi Hendrix, they murdered him. Kobe Bryant, they murdered him. You understand? So all of us are nothing but tools in the hand of white supremacy. We have to wake up from that nightmare, from that imaginary illusion of inclusion that has black people thinking, if I come to America, but stay away from African Americans, I'll be given probationary white status. You'll never be given probationary white status because you are not white. And when they're done using you for your intellectual knowledge, when they're done using you in the labor market, when they're done using you, helping to perpetuate the myth of a multicultural colorblind America, they'll bust you right back to the country you came from. All African people in America who are not practicing Pan-Africanism are simply tools that are being used that have an expiration date. And when your utility to the white power structure expires, you will too, and they will send you back home. And this is why they hate blacks in America so much, the white power structure. We're the only non-white people in the country who cannot be sent home. You cannot be deported. Slavery destroyed your cultural, psychological, and intellectual connection to your ancestral homeland. If the Ghanaian get on your nerve, he go back to Ghana. If the Puerto Rican gets on your nerves, he go back to Puerto Rico. If the Afro-Cuban gets on your nerves, he or she go back to Cuba, right? If the Chinese get on your nerves, send them back to China. If the East Indian gets on your nerves, send them back to India. If the Arab gets on your nerve, send them back to one of the Middle Eastern states. But when American Africans get on your nerves, where do you deport us to? You can't deport us. Yeah. Slavery destroyed that connection that they needed in order to remove us. Most American Africans are so brainwashed, they think they're American. So you cannot deport them because this is what they identify with most. So in other words, the white man created his own problem, which makes it almost impossible to deport us. So the only way to get rid of us is a systemic system of racial genocide, and that's what they're using.